All right. This is sort of an introduction. Uh, I am making this series of videos for my daughters, Olivia and Caroline. And the reason I'm making them has to do, or the story explaining why I'm making them, has to do with the pandemic, 2020, when they were home from school. And that began in when Olivia was in fifth grade. Caroline would have then been in second, I think. When it began, and they were at home for a very long time. They did a bunch of things to try to keep themselves interested when they were not stuck inside the house necessarily, but they weren't going to other kids' houses, they weren't going to school, they weren't going out to events, things like that. And eventually, my wife and I hit upon reading uh, Harry Potter to them, and we read it start to finish over the course of, I forget, I think like 3 or 4 months. We would read them a chapter a day, but we would alternate chapters. Um, and sometimes we would read more than one chapter if it was a short chapter. Um, and while doing that, I ended up doing a lot of funny voices. I had a different voice for each character. Not all of them were funny. My wife uh, came to the conclusion that she couldn't be in the room when I did my Snape voice because I guess I made it too malevolent. Um, but I enjoyed it very much. Consequently, uh, the combination of that activity and the fact that I already worked from home before the pandemic, and so it didn't really change much of anything for me, except that my wife was home more often. Those things together meant that, like, for me, the pandemic wasn't all that bad a an event. Like, I know, like, objectively, it was very bad, but my personal experience of it was I have this great memory of reading Harry Potter to my daughters. Um, and when that was done, when we finished it, I wanted to move on to just do another book. And what I wanted to read them was something I enjoyed more than Harry Potter. Um, I like Harry Potter fine. I'm not the biggest fan in the world. I've read, well, prior to that, I had read some of the books, but not all of them. And I had seen all the movies. Um, but I wasn't a huge Harry Potter fan. I have been, since I was young, a pretty big Lord of the Rings fan. Uh, this is something that I found on my own. When I lived in England, I and I went to an English school. They had in their library, I'm sure the schools I went to in America did too, but they had in their library a copy of The Lord of the Rings. I had already seen the animated version of The Hobbit from the 70s, and I had seen the animated version of The Return of the King from this, I believe, the same animation studio. Um, and I had enjoyed those, but I hadn't really remembered what they were. Like, I remembered The Hobbit, but I didn't even know what, because the Return of the King movie was just The Return of the King. Um, I didn't even know what book it was a movie adaptation of, and I saw it when I was really young. So, but eventually, I read Lord of the Rings. I enjoyed it a lot. For a while, I was one of those people who read Lord of the Rings over and over, like every year. Um, and then, not long after um, reading it for the first time myself and getting into it, I found out that my dad really, really liked it. Now, I didn't live with my dad. He and my mom had divorced when I was very little. Never really lived with them. But he had spent large portions of the 70s and 80s um, sitting and smoking dope and reading Lord of the Rings. And as a result, he had um, large sections of it memorized. And I knew that because he could, once he realized I was reading it a lot and I really liked it, we would talk about it a lot, and he was able to just recite large chunks of it from memory. I don't know whether he ever memorized it all. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But he was one of those people who got really into it around the time when people were spray painting Frodo Lives on subway walls. So once I realized that my dad really liked it, my dad, who I didn't see a lot, like every 5-6 months I would visit him, or less than that, because when I moved back to America for the last time, I was born in Germany, and until I was around 13, I spent most of my life living in Europe. But once I moved to the States for good, when I was 13, I then didn't see him for years at a time. Right? But so once I found out that I had something, that we had something in common, it became, I think, more important to me. And so this is what I wanted to read my daughters, and it didn't work. And it didn't work because they weren't interested. My older daughter, Olivia, had by that time already found out that there were not a lot of women in the story, and that the women there were mostly not drivers of the story, with the exception of Eowyn. That kind of turned her off from it. My younger daughter, Caroline, did agree to have me read it to her. So for a while, I was trying to read it to her as a bedtime story, because I would read to them a lot at bedtime. And eventually, she asked if we could move on to something else. I think the issue is that there's not a ton of dialogue at the very beginning of The Hobbit, which is where I started. And that, made it a little boring for her. The chapters in The Hobbit are somewhat longer, I think, than a lot of the Harry Potter chapters, especially in the early books. And so eventually I moved on to reading her something else. I think I read her like Wizard of Oz or something like that. The only other book series that I got them to let me read to them was Percy Jackson, which I don't enjoy. So I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, but I like Harry Potter fine. I really don't like the Percy Jackson novels. But I read to them. I read the first two, and we were part of the way through the third one when it's just sort of tapered off. So it's been like a couple of years at this point since I've read to them that way. They're getting older. They're 15 and almost 13 now. And I'm 44. And I've reached that age where, you start wondering, or you start thinking about what's going to be the case in the future. You start looking forward, not with joy, to a time when you're not going to be able to do things with them. And that led me to the idea that I could read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings to them this way, by recording myself doing it. And then, if they want to listen when they're older, they can. If they ever have someone they want to share it with when they're older, they can. And it's not the same because, they're not in front of me listening. I can't see their reactions. The best times while reading the Harry Potter books to them were when we got to the big moments, and they had not read the books before. They were new to them, and they hadn't seen the movies, so they did not know what was coming. So, like when you get to that last Snape chapter, or that chapter where you find out about Snape and Lily at the end of Deathly Hallows, like their jaws literally dropped when Dumbledore shows up again. I kind of tricked. I'm not totally proud of this, but I did intentionally trick my wife into letting me read both the chapter where you find out about Snape's motivations and the King's Cross chapter. So in return, she got the last chapter. She got the epilogue. So I don't get that out of this, but it's still worth it to me. So this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to, I think, do a chapter per video. I don't know whether copyright allows this. I don't know whether they're ever going to be interested in it. I am going to do the kind of reading I did to them when they were smaller. So that means I'm going to have accents. I'm going to try to have distinct voices for the characters. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to give every dwarf their own distinctive voice. I'm thinking about The Hobbit here. But yeah, that's the goal. That's the project. I'm going to be putting them on YouTube mainly as a way to freely host them. I figure YouTube will be around in the future. But and I think I'll open them up so that other people can find them. I doubt anyone will or will care or will be interested. But yeah, that's the project. That's why I'm doing it, and that's why it's going to at some point seem kind of funny to anybody else who's watching. If anybody else watches it all, which I doubt.